do. So it all started like in 2006, where with DrupalCon people were really like saying like education and training is the biggest problem we have. So how do we take that on? And luckily, I just 14 days later I got the opportunity to start teaching at university, and asked them like, can we do it differently? Because the main goal was, and that's below there, is to learn how to manage software developers. So I'm teaching mostly to managers, first year master, or master after master, how to actually to deal with software development. And the way they used to do it, this was a programming course where they just learn Java or any other language, when it's very hard for the students to get interested in it, because they are managers. Why do they need to program a game? That doesn't make sense to them. So I asked, can I redo it? I mean, we had so great, interesting meetings just before, so can I redo it? And they allowed me to do that. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But the first thing, I mean, we're talking about open source, right? We have over here open governance. There's also another concept of open innovation. Don't know how many of you know about that concept. And what I'm going to try to end up to is another definition of open university, because today I think it's all about distant learning. I think we can go a lot further. We can actually put it in the same spirit of the other events. But for outsiders, I've noticed that it's actually really taking a leap of faith. I mean, it's easy for us because we are in the pool, right? You experience, if you've been here yesterday and today, you know the culture, the environment. If you get to like students who don't ever heard about Drupal, well, they do know Facebook by now, but like in the first year, they didn't even know Facebook stuff. So you see that they are totally technology aversive. This kind of requires you to take a whole different approach to them. And that's what I'm going to talk about. But so the first main problem you see, if you try to teach anything about software development or technology development, is this red cream principle. So the red cream principle is the idea that technology and everything accelerates all the time, right? It comes from red cream saying that you have to do all the running it takes to stay in the same place. So if you don't evolve, if you don't change, you're actually going backwards, right? So I've used a small example by Michael Welch. Anyone knows Michael Welch? Ever saw stuff of him? If you don't, Google his name in YouTube. He has crazy videos about studies on YouTube. So he starts, for example, with saying like NBC started broadcasting in 1948, and if you calculate everything, by now we have 1.5 million hours of broadcasting. But if you go to YouTube, it's almost 10,000 hours a day, which means that on 6 months, they create more content, and also unique content, because 88% of it is unique, than any broadcast industry. So if you start thinking about that, you try to grasp all the knowledge, that starts to become impossible. So my very first question, like also to my students, is like, how do you learn something that goes so fast? Your knowledge is obsolete by the time you learn it. And I experience that when I start teaching to my students, by the end of the year, there is a new release out. There are new modules out. So by that time, it is obsolete. So how do you deal with that? Well, I think the very first thing you don't need to do is panic, right? So if I look at my students, I have to make the course required, because otherwise they would leave after 1 month. Because it's like a roller coaster. It's fun to get in, but then you go up, and before you know it, you want to get out, right? So it's a little bit hard for them to jump in the pool. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Okay, so but in the end, it's actually very easy. You don't try to understand all the knowledge. The only thing you try to do is navigate your way through it. You're becoming a problem solver. And I like this because it's a joke, right? It's from XKCD. But I like it a lot because it's true. What you're really trying to do is have a very simple pattern, and if you can actually apply this pattern, then you are a computer expert. That's what the joke tries to tell you, right? And everyone can do that. That's basically it. So that's the part about the information overload. The other big problem is technology is a game changer, right? How many of you know about disruptive technology? Anyone hear about it? Yes, okay. So the concept is that you create something, but the thing that you create actually disrupts whatever you are doing. So we all know, like, the music industry got quite heavily in troubles when Napster came out. And at the time of Napster, no one thought that you could actually make money anymore with selling music. But now we've got iTunes being able to do that pretty well, right? So you can still ask money. It's not pure chaos. The other thing is with encyclopedias, right? At the moment you start creating that, no one believes in the Wikipedia, but now, I mean, who still has an encyclopedia, right? So, but that's past experience. I mean, if you look at what's happening today, I mean, WikiLeaks is something creating a lot of controversies today. So what are they changing? What is the technology doing now to us? So this brings me to another problem. How can you build a strategy if technology disrupts the target you're aiming for? So, I mean, by the time you launch your whatever you're trying to aim, right? Your strategy, it's probably obsolete or it will hit whatever you've been targeting, but by the time it hits it, it's gone. And that's why I want to use this image, where what you try to do is start aiming to a moving target. So you don't just try to launch a rocket and see that it happens there. You just put a wheel on there, right? And that's what you need to do with strategies and stuff too. And that's what I've been doing with exercises too. So back to the problem solving. I think both of them have very basic design behind it. You don't try to control everything. You try to navigate through it. But the hardest thing of this thing, I mean, because if everyone can do this, and this is actually your solution, well, why do I need to teach that, right? So the hardest thing in here is actually to start, right? How do you make anyone start? How do you make them jump in the pool? And there is actually a lot of literature on, how the sociology and stuff like pedagogic studies talking about this. And this left diagram is what they call a problem about flow. So what you try to do is the best way to learn is when you are in a flow. So you have on the one hand challenge level, on the other hand you have your skill level, right? If your challenge level and skill level is very low, it's boring, right? If your challenge level is very high but your skill level is very low, you're in trouble. While the other way around, you're very relaxed. But what you really want to get to is like a flow. You want to be in this moment that you forget time, you forget everything, and it's just great amount of fun. And that's when you have exactly the right challenge. The challenge needs to be reachable, but it needs to be fun at the same time. So you need to balance that out. Other parts of pedagogic studies talk about zones. You have the zone of independent development. That's when everyone kind of can just read by themselves. The zone of proximal development is a zone of where you kind of get into a flow, but that's where you need a mediator. A mediator can be a tutor, like a teacher, trying to help the students to the thing they try to learn. Or it can be like in group, right? If you collaborate in group, the group becomes the mediator. So you don't always need the teacher. And that's what I want to go to next, because in many ways, you can start using computer to mediate your learning. I mean, in games, I think it's very present. I mean, you really are in a flow. Games are designed, and I'm not just talking about all the animation and interaction, but they are designed to capture your attention and to have easy steps to start from, but increase the challenge, right? Most games level or have other things that opens once you reach a certain goal. So it adapts and you stay in the flow. It stays with you. But I don't want to focus too much on the whole animation part. That's why I want to show you this. Does anyone know the project Hole in the Wall? Ever heard of it? Okay, so this is a professor in India who created in the how do you call them? The slopes of India, of some of the cities. There's no education, there are no teachers, there's nothing over there. So what he just did is put a wall there, put a screen in there, put a broadband connection in there, and then put a camera on it to see if people, if students would start using it. And what you get out of this is that people in slots, children in slots are actually capable of self-educating. And they start doing quite complicated stuff, biology, all kind of stuff. And there's nothing behind it. It's just an internet connection. So you see that you don't really need a teacher. Now, this took months before they kind of figured out how to download and learn things about whatever they were interested in. And there's another interesting thing is that they are doing that in a group, right? You see the girl behind, she's kind of helping the others how to use it. So there you see the mediation coming again. One of them gets it and finds a kind of, well, she feels great by trying to help the others understand it. And that's stuff you see in the community very often too. I've been doing kind of some experiments with my course. One of the first things I made my students do is blog. They have to create content. And so the way I took it is they need to define their project. And I don't tell them what that means. I just say, bring me something you think is a very good idea. Something maybe that bothers you, maybe that you really would like to have as a web application out there. And it doesn't need to be reachable. It doesn't need to be implementable. Just something you really like. And then I start helping them trying to make whatever the idea is, try to make that real. And the first years, trying to explain them how the whole system works and how the mediation starts and how you can self-organize. It took a lot of time to let them learn that. So what you see in this graph is the green, like that peaks very high in the third year, is the comments people create on a post. The blue line, it's harder to see, but in the last graph you see it as a second peak, is the content the student creates. And then the orange line is my comments to the students. So what you can get out of this graph is that in the first year, whatever they created a content, like the blue line, I kind of had to correct that, change that, say, no, you kind of try this, or no, try this. But then, so the second year was a transition year, but the third year, in the beginning I still had to do that. But after a while I was surprised that I don't have to do anything anymore. I was just sitting there. And then the third year, I was totally surprised because the whole projects were defined by themselves and trying to figure out how did they do that. They just looked at previous projects and in the discussion they kind of get this wisdom of the crowd. But I'll get back to that later on. So what do I get out of it? I mean, I think thinking about technology as a game changer, thinking about this red cream principle, like information goes fast, we need to rethink how we do an exercise, how we take the classroom. So I use a classroom as a workspace and not a theater. I'm not standing in front knowing everything. I just let people get in and work, like we do code sprints, like a lot of things we do at conferences like this. So you try to commoditize your, or standardize your basic things, like your basic courses or your basic exercises. Make screencasts of that. They don't need you for that. They can see the screencasts. You don't have to repeat the same exercise every year. That's boring for me too, right? So I put everything on. I've been recording everything and just giving it them. So the other thing you try to do in class is be the mediator and try to make sure that you can mediate as much as possible to the groups. So now, last years I had like individual project. Everyone was working on their own idea. This year I'm trying to work more on this group dynamics, see how they actually get to a collaboration. And you see, I'm going to talk about it later, but it's based on that micro-spinoff idea that I'm trying to work on. So what I kind of notice is that also a lot of my students, they know more about the topic than I do. They are the experts. I had some developers coming in my course talking about some protocols and some development I never heard of. So you don't need to be afraid there. You don't need to be the expert. You need to be the mediator. The mentor, not the expert. So what we kind of shifted from is from trying to do on knowledge transfer to start doing knowledge creation. And I started noticing that when I had these group discussions with my students, that they were actually doing research for me. They were actually adding to my stuff. I'm now actually writing papers about it because like topics like the internet dilemma, we had some very interesting insights on that. Based on all those experiments, all those projects. So to get back to the course and to get to the micro-spinoffs, the thing I've been trying to do is every year, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm trying to do that self-organization stuff, but there is no documentation on that. There is some information, but it's very hard. So what I just do is I'll try it the first year, and then in the end, I look at the best students, how did they do that, and why did they do that? And I try to integrate that for next year. So like after first year, I noticed that my best students were using Drupal modules. Like the first year, I didn't make them do Drupal development. But I noticed that because they use Drupal modules, they understand better the idea of software designs. So then the next year, I said, well, you have to make Drupal modules. And then my best students start creating APIs. So they went out there, take all kind of APIs, integrate it. And I try to understand, like, okay, that's interesting. So the year after, I started with telling my students, what you're going to do is integrate APIs. And you know what? Drupal is a very good tool for that. It's a good framework for it. And then in that year, a lot of projects failed. And that was an interesting new thing. But another thing is that there was at least one student who found this crazy enough to make a business model out of it. And then he started looking for fundings. And I know that this year he's doing it still. He's actually starting his business. And that kind of made me understand that we as a university, we can be that medium in class where we actually help students both do small research but also start creating micro-spinoffs. So with a micro-spinoff, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3 students maybe that starts like a web development shop or maybe another thing, but quite concrete. But not like you have in many colleges where you just have like a shop. In this, I'm talking about innovative companies, right? So they create something that's not yet finished enough, that they're thinking about maybe selling later on. So they are really making spin-offs. They are not just a simple shop. This is about innovation. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few of the stuff they've been creating. Like first, we started creating like basic CMSs, creating feeds, and starting to do e-commerce. And this was, for example, one that got sold. And that kind of created an initiative for the older students to take this course more serious. Because after all, they're business students, right? Also, another thing I should notice is I always tell them, I don't look at design. I don't care what design you create. So if you look at how they look and feel, that's something they did just because they like it, not because they have to. And so some of them created for a community site. So, but that's still like just creating a module, right? For me, trying to target to letting them understand software development, this is not really adding a lot. So we get to creating modules. So now what I'm trying to tell them, and I think there's where you kind of see the innovation getting in. I mean, a lot of shops, a lot of development, software development is very functional. But the problem is if you don't think about your software design, you kind of get to a point where it's very hard to add one more functionality. So if you think more about what you're doing and you create a good design, it's easier to actually surpass it. But what you kind of get out of this is like this small, what we call S-curves of innovation. So you invest trying to innovate and then you kind of get the return out of it. So when it becomes flat again, you kind of, so if you look at, in innovation they talk about the first part of the S-curve, like this part is the incubation part where you create innovation. This is the growth phase and this is the maturity phase where you kind of get, your money back, right? But this is kind of the same what you do with software development. You invest to actually later on make sure that you can do it easier or keep on growing on it. So I try to teach them that a little bit. They start understanding like, okay, you know what, there's something called organic groups. I've got this idea, and then I figure out like finding what the difference is and then just try to add to that. And some of them actually start creating quite nice software architectures for it. So if you look at the code, it's not like pure messy. I'm not going to show you code because I don't know if a lot of people are interested in that. If you are, I can show it later on. But they are really like looking at two designs and then figuring out how to create an interface between them. Starts becoming more interesting. Or like in this case, using an e-commerce, which is a good system, but then for all different purpose. This was to manage a wine cellar. So why not? I mean, the architecture is already there. Don't reinvent the wheel. I like that ideas. But then we get to like the last part is like trying to integrate APIs. I mean, you know that basically you have a three-tier architecture. You've got the database, core, and user interface. Try to understand, and you know what? If all this get more disconnected, you get these clouds with all kind of systems you can start integrating, and then they become like DJs, right? They start meshing up. And that's basically what I wanted them to see, like this project. There were actually several projects about books. This one integrates CCK, it's Drupal stuff, using the ISBN inside fields, but then connecting it to Google Books and Amazon to retrieve more data from it. Then there were others who actually integrated with Android, so you can actually scan the barcodes and then upload this all, but the other people create the other model, so if you get it all together, you kind of get some interesting technologies. Another project was with Android, where they use GPS coordinations to find places where you can actually get the information. This other one is a further integration with views and CCK, so I consider them as both different API frames. And using the traveler salesman problem, so this is an algorithm to actually figure out if you are kind of create your own routes over Europe, what would be the best way to visit all the cities. So, but you create like, you can now just create the cities as a content, and then you can create a new content where you select all the cities, and then the system just calculates the route for you. That's basically what it's doing using the traveler salesman problem. This was actually 3 years ago, so at that time I think it was quite innovative. Okay, so those are more technical, right? But most of the things, I think software development is a lot about social part as well. I mean, think about what we're doing here. So I wanted to show you some projects where it may be, where you do need to look at the social aspect of it. It's like, this was for trying to calculate fair price using crowdsourcing. So, but to make it more visible so that people know what they're talking about, he starts integrating Google stats to get an extra dimension to the discussion. This was an idea about there are places where it's very hard to get to hospitals. So what they're trying to do is self-medicate themselves. So in this way, some of this is trying to use EEG scans. And so the idea there is that instead of you going into the hospital every week for your follow-up, you kind of do it from distance. And if there's something wrong, the doctor can say you have to come in. And you don't need to like travel a whole day to get to the hospital. That's basically, but I think that can actually also be used for places where you don't are capable of getting to medicine or doctors. So there I see more social implications. This was more to the art side. So very crazy project. Sadly, it failed because it was way too complicated. But I think this could actually start becoming a micro-spinoff if you want. The idea of using Google as a backend for interior decoration and using Google Earth as a front end. So normally we always use Drupal as the front end and not as a backend. In this case, Drupal was a backend. You kind of play with all the 3D things, and then you try to create your interior decoration, and then you push it to Google Earth to show how it starts looking. So I think it was very crazy. This was a project that's kind of finished nicely. The idea of an online wardrobe where people just would create images, but then you tag that images with saying which part of the body it is, and then you can actually get like nice playing stuff. You know, there are games like this, right, where you can put different hats on different bodies. And well, if you think about it, I mean, what we could actually do is if you create a framework like this, you kind of there would be people interested in just playing with this because they can create the outfit and then they can share it with other people saying like, I think I'm going to wear this today, right? But the interesting thing is that you create data that actually may be very relevant for a garment industry, like trying to understand what people would start wearing, right? So that gets me to the reflection. So first of all, this mediation stuff. There's a lot of literature on distributed intelligence or collective intelligence, wisdom of the crowd. crowdsourcing, trying to grasp that. But I think that actually the idea of stigmergy that's coming more from social insect studies is actually very useful. What they kind of tell you is like, if you put a mark out there and some other agent is capable of recognizing that mark, he can continue working on it. So if you kind of try to design that, you kind of start designing mediators, and you can better organize the thing. This is from a paper of my advisor talking about self-organization. So what you get is, if you get a collective together, you get interaction. But from an interaction, you try to get alignment leading to a medium where you see the self-organization. And if you see the self-organization happening, then the interaction actually changes to coordination. So that's what you try to do. If I start in a classroom, first it's just a collective. They are just there. I'm trying to make them interact. But in that process, you are starting to self-organize. And before you know it, you are starting to coordinate what they are doing. And then you create that kind of mediator. And so this is where we start talking about the whole internet dilemma, like how do you make money on the internet. It's something you see a lot. It's like you create a free platform, but you get a stigmergic mediator, and then you try to use that for doing something different. So don't try to. I mean, if you think about Google, you don't ask money for search, right? But it's a great medium for marketing, right? So that's an example for profits. I think WikiLeaks is an example for impact. Because they kind of are leaking all the data, now everyone has to react to it. They are forced to think about the consequences of the things they are writing, and they are forced to rethink the way they are doing business, which I think is a very interesting case. I think what we're doing with the open innovation is a better solution, right? But WikiLeaks is maybe the best way to react to the old school, to the all closed and everything secret stuff. And in education, I see that actually as a way to start getting to the using technology to mediate learning, right? Okay, so I had a little time to prepare all this, so I'm kind of not sure anymore which my slides are. The thing I wanted to show over here is that you really need to understand the social technical hybrid in here. It's not pure the technology, it's not pure the social, there's a hybrid, and that hybrid is the most important element, I guess. So I wanted to demonstrate it also for Drupal. Like this month, there are many Drupal camps. We have this event over here. These events are extremely important for a project as Drupal. Most people, if they describe Drupal, they say it's a content management system, and then in the second thing they say it's a software development framework. But every time then they say that everyone stays for the community. So why don't they say that it's first and for all a social project, right? So you need to understand that those two are not separatable. And, okay, I'm going to skip this. The thing is, if you get like, well, okay, and I'm going to skip that. Let me just go to the forecasting. So thinking about what we had with these exercises, thinking about trying to systemize what is emerging. So every year something emerges, and then you try to systemize that next year to start understanding if you can go a little bit further. I see education as a moving target too. I like that hole in the wall stuff. If you should actually Google that. Hole in the wall, you get to a TED movie. It's very inspiring to see how actually you don't need any kind of teachers. But let's try to put it to a next level. So you try to systemize what is emerging. I think I already said that. Well, wait a minute. The problem is, of course, that you are, because technology is a game changer, you're kind of changing something. And what I've noticed is that although if you go to like a university, they say, and you talk about collaboration with industry, they mostly say like, oh, no, but we want to have objective knowledge transfer, which I kind of think is totally silly. And definitely if you look more into the literature. But on the same time, they're talking about lifelong learning. So what do they want to do? They want to make people just learn all their life and never earn the money? It doesn't make any sense to me, right? On the other hand, I see a lot of innovation happening for education, but they always focus on what is called K-12. So it means the first 12 years of education. And I think, what after it? Then you go back to the old system? You finally got into the pool and then you need to get out of it again? Come on, that's not fair. So what I'm thinking about is autonomy is important, right? But it's not the end, it's the beginning. And that's where I get to the micro-spinoffs. I think that's one thing we can do with universities. So what I'm trying to shift to is more an ambiguous workspace where you have these open university ideas, everything out there. I mean, that should be default. I mean, we should commoditize the education. It should be free and open for everything. That's old school. We already did that. But we can actually shift more to try to get it open to industry and try to get it open to research. I think I give some examples of that. And I mean, if I look at some initiatives like the Google Summer of Code, we had some very interesting things coming out of there. I mean, I would like to have a Google Summer of Year. Not a summer, I would like to have a Google Year of Code. That would be crazy. I know that IBM tries to do stuff. We had a lot of discussions, but I didn't really see any practical thing coming out of it yet. But there are people thinking in that way. And this is coming from a whole different corner. There is another thing happening, and I see that R&D is becoming a moving target too. So first of all, there's something called technology transfer offices. If you see, it has several generations. Like the first generation, they were called like those business people out there. Today, we're talking about the third pillar of a university, meaning that we have this incubation center where our PhDs go to, try to spin off their PhD. And now it's more, so it got closer to the core of the university activities. But discussing this with colleagues in the research on it, we see actually a shift going from the third pillar to a full integration in the educational system. There are some examples of where this is happening, where you really see that creating spin-offs becomes part of the educational agenda, not just after it. The other thing is discussing is I had a lot with people trying to do startups outside university. There seems to be a risk aversive to venture capital. It's very strange. I mean, definitely need to get more into that. And I'm not going to go too deep on that. But the thing is, if you look at venture capital, it's actually logical that they are risk aversive because in the end they need to come up. They just need their turnovers, right? But if you look at the university, our core business is knowledge. So what we actually are capable of doing is, if we have 20 spin-offs that fail, they didn't fail. They didn't become economical productive. But there's a lot of knowledge coming out of them. So we always win. And in this way, I think that there's a lot bigger task available there for universities to actually really try a lot of crazy stuff. So what I kind of see is that, of course, I try to actually talk to the professor of entrepreneurship with the spin-offs the business proposals some of my students are creating, and I've noticed that doesn't really, because the third pillar kind of wants those business students to work for the PhD students. I'm kind of getting under his agenda, right? So it doesn't always go very fluently. But I think if we go to a next generation, we may actually see a bifurcation of these TTOs, where you, on the one hand, try to have small innovation that has direct turnovers, and on the other hand, with your PG, you can go to crazy innovation. That would be, I think, an interesting way to try to go through. So that's the bifurcation. So the way I think we can actually do that, because when I talk to people about this, they say, I fully agree, we need to throw out the whole system and do it all over again. I don't agree with that at all. I think we can grow small, and we can grow inside university and make the change from inside out. And that's what I wanted to say there. I mean, at this moment, I notice that I'm reaching a barrier. I only have one course. I can't create micro-spinoffs with one course. But what I want to try to push is see if I can get more courses, and maybe a 2-year program, where I can actually go to real spinoffs with my students. So try to use the model we are doing in that one course and trying to start applying that to several courses, like a specialization some of the students can select, right? So that you say at start, I want to do a master specialization in that, and then you get a whole package of things you have to do. So I think that's probably a good way to work on it. And then, so So the way I think is we can actually try to nurture that divine, that bifurcation. But I'm going to just stop over here and just end with the last thing. It's like, whatever we're doing with experimental education is, I think it's always beneficial for both the teachers and the students, because we're learning a lot and the students are learning a lot. And if I look at what they have to do in industry today, it's all about innovation. So maybe it's better that to learn them and maybe let them fail during master classes. I mean, I let my students fail because they communicate about their project and they tell what things they have done, and that allows me another way to valorize their work. But the tool doesn't need to work, right? So in this way we can actually learn a lot. And I think that's basically it. So, questions? So the one micro spinoff we had, it started with the API integration with YouTube, getting more images on top of that. But now it turned out to be something totally different. So I'll need to see what they create this year. So, but there is this does anyone know? Is anyone from Brussels here? Yeah. There is something called Beta Group. You know that? So Beta Group is a place where people who want to start up actually present their stuff. So my student actually went to Beta Group, and there he found other people's, and now they are seeming to create their own business. But I wonder, can't we get Beta Group inside class? I would like to get them closer to the core. That's basically. Questions?
No, remarks. What I was very interested in my approach, and I think that the most problem will be also to try to extend your approach, university approach to long, I would say, to everybody. Not only to students,
no, I agree. But
you have the competence, but
yeah.
I would say,
no,
I think all our society is not ready.
Well, the thing is, you don't want to change society overnight, right? So what I think you can do is create all these small living labs where you can actually start doing that. Well, living labs may not be the best word because you try to.
I am 67 years old. I do a lot of things in IT since 40 years. I like a lot of people since 40 years. And I have myself do what I think all the society has to do, but it's not still so common.
Yeah, but I think the best way to actually convince society is by example. So if you can show that it works, then they are yeah, but it's one thing to say, I mean, here is the theory and here is my design and that will work. I think I don't believe in that so much. So what you can do, if I have my course and I have so I have now one micro spinoff coming up, but if I have a second and a third and a fourth, and I can show how that works, I'm pretty sure that people start, I mean, I'm talking to some business schools who actually think this is an interesting model, how are they doing that? So if you have something that works, you can actually allow it to expand. I believe that you grow out of a pool, right? And then you go create your own pool.
Neither explain also what are not, which are the things which are not.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
I think interesting as the things which are not.
Yes, but the problem is for business, that's hard to acknowledge because, I mean, it's not always, definitely in the European culture. I know in the American culture that's easier, but try acknowledging that you failed, that's one, and then saying what we learned about it, that's a little bit hard. But if you put on the educator's hat, that's perfect.
That's one of the major problems of European culture is that we are not enough, Latin people, we are not enough open to what you can learn with failure.
Yes and no. I think yes because in business, but I think we have a very interesting educational system, and I think instead of trying to do it at business, let's just say that it's inside education, and then probably I think it's more accepted. So you are more accepted in an educational setting to have a project that fails than in a business setting to have a project that fails. But if we can make this what I called the this ambiguous workspace, right? If we can make that hybrid, we can always say when it failed, it was an educational topic, right? And when it doesn't fail, it's one of those business partners who did it, right? So you kind of, I think we can work around our culture. Culture shouldn't be an issue. Other questions or? Nothing? Okay. Okay, can I ask one question? Who thought that if you see the title and hear the talk that it's not actually what you wanted? Can I just see hands who think like I'm trying to get feedback? So who think like if you look at the title said like that seems interesting and now you have the talk you said like whoa no that's not at all what I thought it was. Can you? No?
For me it was different and it was better than what
I heard. Okay.
I want to say the same.
Thank you. That's flattering, but okay. Thank you very much. If you have more questions, if you want to help with this stuff, I'm very open to any kind of collaboration. So.